Warning, this podcast contains scenes of explicit nonsense and lore.
Previously on the Resident Evil podcast.
If you look how absolutely fantastic the Resident Evil 3 intro was, to go from something like that to this, it's just watching it just puts me in a bad mood.
So the enemies in Code Veronica are like probably consistently the most frustrating, I think, of the franchise.
It just looks like a cock and balls, doesn't it?
I did exactly the same as well. I didn't even open the manhole until literally I had the halberd ready to go.
And the bats as well. You know, you've got bats. You've got bats. You've never had bats before.
Nick, you've got bats. Nick, you've got bats.
Resident Evil podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 59 of the Resident Evil podcast, a podcast more contagious than the coronavirus, so stay safe everyone. I'm Nick, better known as Neptune Skywalker. Let's see who's joining us today. Sorry ladies, he's not Robert Pattinson, just some guy from the north of England. It's the Batman.
Hi.
He recently got ambushed by a group of naked zombies in a stream. Now, what he does in his own time is entirely up to him. It stars Tyrant.
Yo.
He's been in charge of more Resident Evil websites than Vincent used teenage test subjects. It's Romby.
Hi.
And finally, he's created more traps for men than Katie Price. It's George Trevor.
I'm just here for the quiz.
Coming up on today's podcast, we'll be looking at all the latest Resident Evil news, both gaming and site news, and it's a joy to actually say that we have a site to talk about. And our main discussion of the podcast will be looking at our final preview of Resident Evil 3 Remake, which is due out in less than 4 weeks' time at the point of recording. So we're going to be looking at our final hopes and fears for what could be the final remake. Who knows? We'll see. And then we'll be rounding off proceedings with another edition of Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. So without further ado, we'll start with some site news. So, of course, our big news that's happened in the last week is ResidentEvilPodcast.com is open. Oh, at last. This has been, 5-6 months in the making. It launched to great fanfare, so I would personally also like to say thank you to everyone that quickly joined us for the opening ceremony, which was on our Discord, which was nice. Just a couple of people turning up, listening to me ramble on, and amazingly, all the technology worked well, and it actually opened when I basically clicked the open button on WordPress, which was a miracle in itself. But yes, website is open. I hope everyone's been having a good browse and looking at some of our content. I think we explained previously, it's not a full-blown fan site per se, but a place where we can showcase our projects and what a project we have showcased. I refer, of course, to John's incredible Mythology 4.0, which is nearly 3,000 pages in length and is quite simply the most in-depth analysis of the timeline that has ever been produced. So have a good look around that. I would recommend downloading them because they're all on PDF, so you should be able to click the download button, put them onto your computer, and then browse in your own time. John, congratulations, my friend.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks. How much do I owe you for that plug?
Invoices in the post. But, seriously, though, incredible timeline. This has been taking you the last 10 years?
Yeah, I enjoy the games, obviously, but the storyline in particular has always been my personal favourite aspect of the series. It's something I've always followed quite closely. I was influenced by other timelines, of course, like Sean's on the RE Horror and some of the earlier chronologies that people had done. And, yeah, it started off as just something purely for fun, but then it just got ridiculously big, and, I found myself doing really silly silly things like my enjoyment of the games became a little bit compromised because I was more worried about reading newspaper textures and looking for clues on dates rather than simply sitting back and enjoying the games. I remember, I think it was Operation Raccoon City. These were the days before people regularly extracted textures from the backgrounds and stuff. And I remember walking around firing guns so the muzzle flare would illuminate textures on the wall so I could write down dates. And I remember I was just thinking to myself, what the fuck am I doing with my life? And as more games came out, 2012 in particular, when we had all that media, I just fell really far behind, and I've been playing catch-up ever since. Now that it's done, I'm really pleased people are enjoying it, and it's a massive weight off my shoulders. I'm just glad I finally got it finished, because there was many a time where I thought I would just never get it finished. But it's thanks to you guys, really, doing these podcasts and the discussions we've had. That's given me the enthusiasm to keep going, so you've all played your parts, even if you didn't necessarily know it.
Oh, no, don't give that. I can't give any credit, John.
I feel the same.
We've been nagging. How are you going on when it's finished?
But yeah, that many pages.
I mean, yeah, it's incredible. Just for a bit of guidance for everyone, it's all thoroughly researched. It's looking at Japanese translated material. It's looking at the English localizations. And it is just, John, your opinion on it. There's so many materials and contradictions that have been over the years. You're not going to please everyone. So, just bear that in mind when reading. And if you've got a specific question, we've opened up a specific timeline channel in our Discord server where you can directly ask John any question you have, and he'll do his best to answer them as quickly as possible. But lots more to look forward to. John, I think you said in some of the notes there may be an alternative 1998 timeline coming.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the remakes of 2 and 3 are a highly contentious issue. I mean, we've voiced plenty of times on these podcasts how wary we were about their existence, and from a personal point of view, I was particularly unhappy when they announced Remake 2 because I thought potentially I'm going to have to chuck away all the work I'd done on the original game. So I was pleased when it was more of a reimagining, but I am aware that there's going to be a large portion of the fan base are going to take the remakes of 2 and 3 as canon no matter what anyone else says, and rather than try and overlap them all, I just think it would be easier to do just an alternate 1998 with the events of Remake 2 and 3 as taking precedence over the original game. And that way people can just pick which versions they prefer rather than just constantly arguing, which game's canon and which one isn't. So it'll be a bit more work, but I think that's the right thing to do with it, just so every game's covered.
I particularly enjoyed, the inclusion of Operation Raccoon City, and I don't know if Batman would agree, maybe not so much the content of the game, but I like the fact that you included the Inserted Evil, marketing campaign, because I think there's some really great stuff that came with that.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the big influences for putting Operation Raccoon City in there, because I know we knew from pretty early on it wasn't going to be canon, and I did look at it all. I wrote it all down when I got the game, and about 70% of it could hypothetically fit, but there's one level in particular, I think it's the Spec Ops fight against the Tyrants, where that just wouldn't fit in any kind of capacity, so I just had to leave that out. But I must admit, the Inserted Evil files was the reason I decided to put the game in there. And at one point I changed my mind and wanted to take it all off, but because I'd done it on Microsoft Word, I couldn't do it without ruining all the formatting, so it ended up just stopping in there. But you're right, George, it's got some decent background lore, Operation Raccoon City, and the game just seemed to have developed a bit of a cult following as it's got older, so it gives a nice little flavour of where events could hypothetically fit. But I did want to make it clear that I'm not trying to say it's canon, because it isn't.
Not to tell you what you want to do or anything, John, but if you wanted to put 4D Executor in a nice blue font or something.
Do you know what I might do? Because if I'm going to do that with Operation Raccoon City, then I don't think it's fair to completely ignore things like Gaiden and 4D Executor. I think you've got to treat them all the same. You've either got to include them all or none at all.
I do understand why you put in Orc, though. I don't know where its sort of cult status has come from lately. I think GT's probably responsible for that.
Yeah, he is, yeah. It's all your
Thank
fault.
you. Because that was completely USS Command. Rodney Holbrook, who's a staff member at Crimson Head, he contacted the guys that were responsible for that marketing campaign when he was writing Inserted Evil article, and a lot of the assets had long gone, and using the way back archive internet, and it was, I've got to say, it was all very much a labour of love by USS Command that got all of that information.
Yeah, I've seen the threads he's made, and he's took it to a whole other level compared to what I did, making lists of all the the assets and all the little information you can get on there.
Other things available on our website, I'll quickly peruse. You've got my new home for my Resident Evil Gaiden editorial, which delves into the mysteries of this game, history, storyline, and canonicity. All my own opinion, of course, but I have strong views on that infamous ending. There's also a fanfic editorial that I wrote long before Darkside Chronicles came out, talking about Enrico Marini and a chap called Gunny, as I finally fulfilled my desire to have a Resident Evil game set at night in a forest. I thought, if Capcom aren't going to do it, I'm going to do it. So there we go. 100% unofficial, but if you take the time to read it, you'll note how it resolves the zero plot hole of how Enrico found his way through from the master elevator all the way to the mansion and so forth. So that's a nice little bit of fun. We've also got Sean and Bat's series playthrough, which you might want to check out. This was something that we went through the entire games. Just brings it up to speed how the games flow in chronological order, because probably not a lot of people have actually played them all, in one go in the right order, especially when you've got to factor in all the little sub chapters from Umbrella Chronicles and so forth. So that's worth a bit of a read, and you also get a kind of a smaller version of John's timeline as well in that. There's also other things coming soon. You'll see there's my confidential report editorial, which will be coming soon, and hopefully we've got some more things bubbling away. So keep an eye out on the website, and lots more features to promote.
Let's have a look at what you could have won.
So further bit of site news. By the time this podcast goes out, our competition will be live, where you can win a signed copy of the Xbox One version of Biohazard 7, the grotesque version, signed by the producer and director of the game. So you may be thinking, how can I enter this fabulous competition? Firstly, if you head over to our Twitter page at Resi Evil Pod, you can enter the competition by simply retweeting our pinned tweet there and following us at Resi Evil Pod. You'll need to do both in order to get both entries into the competition. Then, if you want 2 more entries, then you can head over to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/TRE podcast, and you can like the appropriate post on there and follow us on Facebook as well. Do both, and you'll have your 2 further entries into the competition. Good luck, everyone. The closing date for the competition is the 14th of April 2020 at 23:59 GMT. Our terms and conditions are on our website, and we'll be announcing the winner in the next podcast, episode 60. So best of luck, everyone. Final bit of site news very quickly. We've had a couple of streams, updates. Stars, you've completed your crisp playthrough for Resident Evil 1, Sega Saturn.
Yeah, that was a successful one, really. I did not realise, and I really have took it for granted because it's obviously the first version of a Resident Evil game I ever played. I didn't realise how fresh it was to so many people. So it was nice to sort of debut. I know people have seen these things on YouTube videos before and whatnot, but it was nice to actually do a little bit of a tick showcase to see what the kind of things that they can do and show the battle mode, which a surprising number of people said that they've never seen it before. So
me included.
It was quite a successful one to debut, really.
It's not surprisingly not something that is found online very much. It's not easy to capture or emulate properly, as you are well aware. It's not very commonly seen. There's more images, I think, than there's been video of it. There's plenty of people who probably never experienced it at all.
Definitely worth checking out. On the other side of the coin, you also finished your Resident Evil 6 stream, so congratulations.
Sorry for that, everybody. We're on to 7 VR now. So,
yeah,
that's good fun.
We've both been doing Resident Evil 7. I've been battling through, which was a proverbial nightmare.
Let's just take a quick aside. GT, Nick, how have you got on with the chainsaw battle?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching Sean's battle with Marguerite and just thinking, this must be amazing in VR. And I know it's challenging, but as the 5 people that were watching you play it last night, I found it, I was embarrassing myself. Yeah, I find it very hard. And then, I'm sorry, Nick, but someone then mentioned to me, don't worry, Nick was just as bad.
To be fair, yeah, my battle with Jack was horrendous. I had to eventually do that off screen. That was difficult. I just couldn't get to grips with the chainsaw mechanics, so that's my excuse. Marguerite was a lot better.
So, can I just ask, did you rage quit?
I did rage.
So did I. And just like you, Nick, I did it off screen.
Yeah, I've never rage quit before, but I did for Jack. I was awful.
Can I just ask as well, what difficulty are you guys playing this on?
Normal.
I wanted to almost lie and say, yeah, hardcore, just reduce my embarrassment. But yeah, I was on normal. Yeah. It's a bit like Nick. I just found the chainsaw seems to just cut out at the right moment. Also, am I right to think that there's no quick turn? Because I seem to be turning around like with the speed of a bus.
We must play the same. Down and circle does a quick turn. I think it was Kendo that told me this during the stream. Like, Nick, you are aware you can just press down and circle to turn quick. I was like, oh.
To be honest, the thing that was making me fucking scream at my PC, and I was actually going mad, was fucking Nick's literally getting chased down. He's getting murdered, right? And we'll go into a menu, select a bottle really slowly, click use instead of just fucking hitting the R1 key.
Oh, that's exactly what I was doing. I think, Nick, we need to read the instruction manual.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, half your rep team incompetent at Resident Evil 7. But there we go. But you can check out them on our YouTube channel.
I'll give you props for playing a normal, I guess.
Yeah.
He's brave.
Hardcore's biggest difficulty was the very start of the game. That's the place where I got the most frustrated playing it, I think.
I now find actually in hardcore the mere battle easy, just from the point of view there's that very easy technique, where you can just push her away and then just shoot her, which I saw on YouTube. So I'm sure again with Jack, very simple way to get through it.
That's just another one. Nick. Nick, what does L1 do, Nick?
I'm told it does a block.
And what didn't you do at any point during these boss fights?
No, I don't use the block button in Resident Evil 7.
Blocking is cheating.
Yeah. Can we move on, please, gentlemen? Can we move on? Gaming news. Now, obviously, the vast majority of gaming news is Resident Evil 3 based, so we won't dwell on it. A very quick roundup. We've had new trailers. We've had new maps for Resident Evil Resistance. New details have come out. We've got at least two new maps, Casino and the Amusement Park, as well as new Mastermind, which that went around the internet very quick to a lot of excitement. The return of Alex Wesker, which was hinted at, I think, with some of the files that were picked up earlier, but also the man himself, Lord Spencer, joining Annette and Daniel Fabron as a known mastermind. So who's excited who they want to play as?
It has to be said, both of them look fabulous in the art they've released so far.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's great, isn't it, in one sense, but on another, it's really bloody frustrating how, Spencer's been such a large shadow across the entire series, and yet he's barely appeared, and the first time they're making him front and centre is in a fucking multiplayer non-canon game. It's really bloody frustrating. It's good that they're using him and still acknowledging him, but it isn't half annoying at the same time.
And they've all got their special powers, if you like, or their abilities. So we know Fabron can deploy Mr. X, and Annette can deploy her husband. Alex Wesker can deploy a plant, which can't move, but it's apparently going to add a bit more layer of expertise.
Have you seen it? It's huge.
It is
It's
huge.
massive. It is huge. Yeah.
Yativio.
Yativio, so it sounds a bit like the Pokemon Yetival, but there we go. It's moulded a bit like Plant 42 and takes up a huge amount of space, and we'll see how it unfolds. Spencer, on the other hand, perhaps people were expecting him to deploy the blobs, but no, he has a disintegration field, which is an interesting concept.
If it ends up looking like the lasers from the movies, I'm going to be so angry.
I never thought of that. That's a possibility, isn't it?
All it says is it's designed to slow the survivors down. It severely damages any survivor who haplessly passes through it.
There we go. What are the chances that because they've created a Spencer for this, that Spencer appears in Resident Evil 3 Remake?
It's possible. I don't see why they wouldn't.
It depends how much crossover there is, because what's really interesting at the minute is the fact that in terms of like Resident Evil 3 and Resistance being packaged together, there hasn't really been any crossover content at all yet. In fact, I don't even think there has been any. We've not got like,
other than the generic zombies, yeah.
There's no sort of like Nikolai Mastermind deploying the Nemesis, or a really obvious sort of scenario like that. So we'll just have to see what happens.
It'll be DLC. Yeah, DLC, I'd would imagine.
Or unlockables.
There was talk
Play the
today that was
game.
floating around some Facebook channels. God knows if it's true that there's going to be some microtransactions with this
Nah.
for skins. Was that
I
false?
think they've clarified it. It's in-game currency that you get at the end of each round, apparently, and it's used to unlock like crates, but only in-game cosmetic stuff.
That's fine.
Which-
I don't have a problem with that.
Which, yeah, makes sense. That was in the beta as well. There was the points we didn't know what they were for, but you got them for completing things. So
Project Resistance, there was a digital art book released today.
Yes, I
Oh,
know. I
yeah,
did
must
see
be,
that.
yeah.
Yes, that's interesting.
Has anyone taken a look at it yet?
Well, I can't give you too much information because I clearly downloaded the wrong one because mine's all in Japanese, but it comes out as a PDF. It looks very nice. It mainly seems to be sort of art-based with sort of pointers maybe about, little tips and things. But it's quite detailed. I think both on the RE Twitter and the Biohazard Twitter have both tweeted it out, so you can just download it, download the link straight from there. But I'm looking at it now, there's kind of pictures of various areas, scenarios. There's definitely some bio information on Jill and Nemesis and Mikhail Nikolai. Tyrell Patrick, Murphy Seeker. They're all there with some little bios. Brad Vickers gets a little bio as well.
And John, you called out the amusement park as being a potential map, if I remember.
Yeah, there was a clue on the tutorial of the demo we played. Because obviously it was all recycled newspaper textures from Remake 2, but one of them was a new one that said something like a corporation takes over abandoned theme park. So the clue was there.
Good spot. So we will be playing this. We'll try and get some games going online, so you can join us along. God knows when. We'll all be playing Resident Evil 3 Remake first. But yeah, hopefully we'll get some podcast mastermind challenges going on, which should be quite cool. Other bit of news does relate to Resident Evil 3. The Resident Evil 3 vinyl will be released via Laced Records. Now, collectors will have known. They've already picked up some copies of, I think, 0, Code Veronica, Remake, and 2, I think, have been released. Another lovely art pack. Now, adding to that list is 3, which I have to think looks the best. The purple disc vibe looks sweet. Get it? Yes, a digital double art pack available now to pre-order for Lace Records. I don't think it's given a specific date when it's out yet.
Late April, I think.
Late
is
April,
what
yeah.
it said.
Rob, I know you've got all 4 previously. I assume you've pre-ordered.
I still need to order this one. Actually, I'd completely forgotten. So I will probably do that later this week.
It's a nice purple colour, isn't it? Like Nemesis Blood.
Yes, it's
And the
sweet.
tentacle. Sweet is Nick Cedius. The artwork looks very nice. It's funny, it's still the original soundtrack, but
Well, it's a great soundtrack, of course. 3.
Mm.
I wonder how many people who have bought
wonderful.
these actually have a vinyl player to play it on.
Yeah, I have. I mean, I think Sean's got it as well. I've been playing the Code Veronica one, which has got some very nice artwork as well.
Have you been playing on your vinyl? Have you got a vinyl player?
Yeah. I've got
nice.
a couple of Technics, from my old hip hop days. So yeah, I've been playing it. I've been playing it on those. Not doing any mixing, just listening to it.
remixing the Code Veronica with the Resident Evil 0 soundtracks.
Yeah.
Remix there.
GT will be the DJ for the after party for the website.
Oh, cool.
Other bit of news, Netflix news. So there's been talk of a Resident Evil live-action Netflix TV show in the works. Loads of rumours keep floating around that it's started filming. We've had premises. If you thought Jake Muller as Wesker's son was
No, don't even.
Oh, no, I love this. Let's have Billy and Jade Wesker, everyone.
So let's join Albert Wesker as a 50-year-old man with 2 twin daughters.
Yeah, it's a sitcom set in the Resident Evil.
Life with Wesker.
Well, we've had everything. We've had a musical Biohazard. Why not a sitcom?
So I just want to precate, this has not been confirmed.
No.
The actual production had a log bit that was confirmed and then removed, as in it came from Netflix's official website. And then,
Yeah, which you can probably believe more than the Jade and Billy Wesker.
Yes.
It's kind of like the Brady Bunch with all the Wesker children in the Spencer mansion. Good night, Albert. Good night, Jake. Good night, Alex.
Oh dear.
If one uses the Wayback Machine and goes back to that page as it launched, this is what it said. The town of Clearfield, MD, wherever that is,
Maryland.
Maryland, has long stood in the shadow of three seemingly unrelated behemoths, the Umbrella Corporation, the decommissioned Greenwood Asylum, and Washington, D.C. Today, 26 years after the discovery of the T-virus, that would make it the 90s then, secret held by the three will start to be revealed at the first signs of Outbreak.
That sounds shit.
So we're going to have a third universe of the game universe, the movie universe.
It also says produced by Paul W.S. Anderson.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It is, however, produced by the same production company as his films, though, because they have the rights.
They have the rights.
So it could still potentially be set in the Anderson universe, then, is it?
I think they've said it's not, but we won't know until we know, I guess.
Unless that synopsis has changed. That was on the Netflix official site.
Yeah, and then it got removed. And there was confirmation. Well, I think the rumour was it was supposed to start shooting in South Africa in August.
I heard that.
It was.
Which makes sense, because Final Chapter was all shot in South Africa, wasn't it? So
this is what I said to someone else, which is that, it makes sense that because Final Chapter was shot in South Africa, but that was also where they had managed to kill one stunt performer and almost kill another, and had all these issues. You perhaps maybe don't want to shoot in South Africa, not because you can't, but because it isn't a good look.
It doesn't take Nick much to get in a Final Chapter plug, does it?
Still hasn't seen the movie, which is he's waiting. He's waiting for us to get to it so he can be enthralled in live response.
yes.
We can all hear his reactions.
I think that does conclude all the news. Okay, so we now move on to our discussion for the podcast. It's our final preview of Resident Evil 3 Remake.
I got you.
Who are you? What are you doing?
Name's Carlos. I'm Sadie. I'm with the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service. UBCS for short.
This city is completely cut off, isolated. We need help. My men cannot do this alone.
The town's crawling with those freaks. No chance of fighting our way out of the city. Why is she here? She's unreliable.
It's me he's after. I'll buy you some time.
Hey, wait! Wait, Joe!
So here we are, gentlemen. We are tentatively approaching the release of Resident Evil 3 Remake. Some never thought this day would happen in terms of both Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Remake, but alas, we are here. The Capcom wheel continues to turn with a game a year, and we've reached the final of the PlayStation trilogy that is Resident Evil 3. We've had a nice new trailer, which shows off the mechanics quite well. Kat, the community manager at Capcom, has shown off a live gameplay stream only a couple of days ago, which showed some of the new mechanics in action. And a demo is coming. At the point of recording, we haven't had the demo released, but I think we are qualified enough to be able to work out how this game is going to follow. It seems to, it's obviously running in the RE engine, and it's following a very similar technique to that of Remake 2 alongside the new mechanics. So what we're going to do is just go through some of the new areas and the new features of this game and what we're hoping to see. So we'll start with then just a quick overview from Rob as to what so far his vibe is with regards to this game. Where are you feeling this game is going to be in terms of overall importance and gameplay mechanics?
I think watching both the trailer and a bit of Cat's stream, which other thing, but I'm still torn, I think, on what I'm expecting. It's obviously much like thinking about the previous remake. It's kind of like there's a lot of reimagining here, but at the same time, what's been shown so far has been a lot more referential to, say, other titles and the stuff that's come beforehand. So I feel like it's very much a mixed bag. I think the gameplay is not really much in question. It's more or less the same concepts, just with like added tweaks like the dodge and everything. I think it's going to play perfectly fine, and I think that part's not going to be the issue. And it'll be very interesting to see how it's actually able to control when you're being chased by the Nemesis and so forth. I feel like it's more of what's been shown is more of a hub world with the different levels of traversal and through different buildings and so forth. There's an interesting design plan, and I'm curious to see how the actual fully expanded map will work as you slowly make your way through the areas. And there's obviously been discussions about the way the subway system works and the hubs and so forth. So I'd be very curious to see how that works as well. It doesn't feel like it's going to be one continuous sets of streets. It sounds like it's going to be like this area, then you get access to another area and so forth. And that's why there's been stuff like the subway and the sewers and so forth. So I'm still definitely curious about what else is going to be added. I think mostly what they've been showing is all very early stuff, so clearly they're trying to keep a lot of stuff up their sleeves. I'd be very interested to see if there's a final launch trailer, if it does the old classic shows far too much of the game kind of deal, but we'll wait and see with that. And then I suspect the demo is going to be probably a very similar bit of the same stuff we've been seeing recently, really, because I think that's an area that obviously could work, but obviously they may also want to have at least one Nemesis encounter in there. So I don't know, I'd be very interested to see what they pick for that too.
Sean, what's your kind of preliminary view of how this game's looking so far?
As I've said a few times on streams and on Twitter, and I think even in the previous podcast, I'm all for embracing the changes that this one's going to make. Since they very much changed their approach to what I thought they were going to do, and I thought they were going to do a remake that was effectively going to replace the original version of 2 in the canon. As John said earlier, it kind of exists as a reimagining that can be classed in a similar sort of way to the Dark Side Chronicles, Umbrella Chronicles retellings. So with regards to that, yeah, I'm all for them just going mad and changing it. And some of the stuff that they've actually done looks interesting. I'm quite interested to see developments in the mercenaries and their relationships with each other. And so I'm not too hot on the redesigns of some of the enemies and whatnot. But what I do like and what I do really appreciate, and it was very much apparent in Cat's stream, is that they are trying to keep a lid on as much as they can. And even like as Kat was walking around the streets, she was very careful to not show too much. And so I really hope they maintain that all the way through to the release date. But the danger of the demo being data mined is hanging over this now, I feel. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, I mean, it looks good fun. I've got some really high expectations for a couple of moments, which I'll elaborate on later. But yeah, so far so good. One of my concerns was that I thought some of the city streets and sections looked quite hollow and a bit soulless, but certainly seeing it on Cat's stream with the environmental audio and stuff, and there's some really good environmental audio that she showed off. Like at one point, Jill's walking around on the rooftops, and you can hear like battles and gunfire and stuff going on over like the dog cries and things like that. So it sounds quite eerie in places. So if they can push that atmosphere, I'm all for it. So yeah, quite promising, really. Quite looking forward to it.
Batman?
Yeah, very similar. I'm wanting them to just embrace the changes as well and go mad, because as much fun as the original game was, it was pretty hollow in terms of story and relationships with the characters. I'm very interested to see what they're going to do with the UBCS this time. Tyrell obviously seems to have a much more prominent role going to the RPD with Carlos. I'm assuming he's going to stick quite closely to Nikolai throughout the game, which will make, I'm assuming, Nikolai's eventual betrayal of him all that more hard-hitting. Mikhail as well doesn't seem to have as much of a significant injury as he did in the original game, so he'll hopefully have a bit of a bigger role. Changes like the cable car being put in the subway I think is quite good, and there's obviously more Raccoon City survivors, just normal citizens running around. I'm very interested to see how they're going to treat Outbreak in this game. They're obviously paying tribute by having so many Easter eggs dotted around, but I'm just wondering if they are going to reference it in terms of the scenarios that happened, or if they're just going to ignore it completely, because there does seem to be a lot more civilians still alive as of September 28th than what there was in the original game. Likewise, I'd be interested to see if Marvin has a little role in this game as well. I could see them just ignoring what happens to him in desperate times. Maybe Carlos will come across him in the RPD, I don't know. The enemies, for the most part, look fine. I'm not thrilled about the new Hunter Gamma. The design of the creature itself looks cool, but for me it just looks too far removed for anything that would come from the Hunter program. I think I'd have preferred it if it was more of an irregular mutant than a Hunter. The Nemesis itself, I'm still not completely sold on him. I want to see a bit more of him. I am worried he might overshadow things a bit too much, a bit like Mr. X did in Remake 2. But overall, I'm quite pleased with the way it's turning out. I'm pleased there's like a hub area. They've gone crazy with their Easter eggs compared to Remake 2. It was disappointing the RPD had so little in terms of Easter eggs compared to previous games, but we'll see. I've got a bad feeling about Raccoon Park. I don't know why, but I've got a feeling that might get shafted, but hopefully the clock tower will be there, and we've seen a little glimpse of the hospital, so yeah, it's all looking quite good.
George, you've been quite media-free, should we say, trying to keep yourself as less spoiled as possible, so apologies for bringing you on the podcast, so you had to spoil yourself.
Sorry.
So, from what you've been looking into, what's your feelings of the game, preliminary views?
I have very strong feelings, but I must qualify everything I say by the fact that, yeah, up until today, I'd avoided all details, and I was happy to go through it today, and also I missed Kat's stream. Last week, my husky had the audacity to be attacked by a little terrier. She can handle it. Her great-grandmother's a Czechoslovakian wolf, so she's fine, but I didn't handle it very well, to the extent that my doctor prescribed me Valium, which I didn't take until today, which I did after watching all these YouTube trailers for it. Frankly, out of respect for the love and dedication that clearly has gone into it, Kawata-san, Peter Fabiano, even Kat, the community manager. So I don't want to be too disparaging on the efforts and dedication that's been put in, but I just found what I was seeing because I didn't want to rant on this podcast and bring all of that down. What I saw, it was so painfully linear, it looks stunning. The neon lights and the rain and the outside looks beautiful, but it was almost like a beautiful carousel. The horse it goes round and around. It doesn't actually have any free will, particularly where to go. It's got a pole stuck up its arse and just goes round and around and around. And similar with this game, you're just almost just going, again, just walking forward. This is what bored me senseless after I left the RPD in the remake of 2. I just feel, again, that we're catering for an audience of gamers that just seem to be quite happy to put out these, YouTube videos with this, I feel, disingenuous terror, screaming, Nemesis looks so scary, the tyrant looks so scary. I feel they're screaming for subscribers. Real fear, and there's a point to this. For me, real fear, real tension comes from being thrust into the RPD, not having a clue where to go, but having the free will to go north, east, south, and west. And the one thing that I do know is that my progression to safety is going to involve going into certain rooms and certain areas that are currently locked off for me, and the items and the keys, the item in order to progress are maybe on the other side of the RPD, and there's no handholding. I mean, this looked painfully linear to me, and not only that, the coverage that I saw, you've even got Carlos in your ear telling you exactly where to go. So it looks stunningly beautiful, but again, it's just almost, I've used before maybe unfairly the word lazy development, but it's not, what these guys are doing. I've got a lot of respect for them, but to me it's unimaginative and almost, I feel, insulting to the gamer that they feel that we're just not capable of just being thrust in the middle of the RPD, not being told where to go. And that's part of the fun, making the mistakes and having to find out for ourselves. And last thing I want to say, quite frankly, why would Peter Fabiano, why would Kawata-san, even be mindful to maybe change it up when you've got these huge streamers and huge Resident Evil channels, hundreds of thousands more subscribers than mine has. So maybe have a bit more influence than I do, just putting out all these videos where, again, I just feel it's disingenuous fear when actually, have some backbone and call them out for the fact that, these games are just not providing, for me, and I think for them as well, if they search their souls deep down, isn't providing any of the actual survival horror challenge.
Not a fan of the remakes then?
No, thankfully. But it looked beautiful, and you can see the dedication and the passion that's gone into it. To me, I just think they've taken, Kawata's vision is to take Resident Evil with this engine into a completely different direction where frankly, I don't know if they don't have the confidence in us as gamers that we might actually enjoy, like I said, a bit of challenge, but the fear of not knowing where you're going and not just being constantly directed forward in this kind of linear, go from this level, now you're going to this level, and now you're going to this level. And you've got Carlos telling you where to. And very quickly, I mean, I don't know if I'm being a bit of a snowflake about this, but can I ask, why is the South American character of Carlos being voiced by an American with an American accent? That's just a small thing.
All your things you've said there, George, I can actually use and say, do people now understand why I love Resident Evil 7 so much?
Yes. Yes, absolutely agree. I was actually going to say, since Kawata's been on board, the only two games that have really scratched that itch for me are Revelations 2 and Resident Evil 7.
I was just going to say, you make a good point there, George, because we've heard rumours about this so-called fast travel thing that's going to be in the game. I don't think it will be, personally, but can you imagine if it would be? I mean, part of the fun of Resident Evil is being stuck in a save room. You've got limited ammo, limited herbs, whatever, and you sort of have to plan the best way to get from point A to point B. Do I go down this street where there'll be zombies and potentially Nemesis, or do I go through the sewers where Nemesis won't be there, but there'll be hunter-gamers there, for example? And to have something replace all that by saying, right, you're in a subway car, let's just fast travel and just magically teleport from one point here right across the city to this point and just completely bypass all that. You know, I can't even think that Capcom would consider such an idea. I mean, can you imagine being in a save room in the mansion and just being able to teleport from one side of the mansion to the other because you can't be bothered to play through it yourself?
I think people have got the wrong idea what this fast travel system's probably actually going to be, which is that I suspect the map's going to be made up of a series of various hub parts, and the fast travel only gets you from one station hub to another station hub.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be like
I agree.
Jump from RPD to station, jump from petrol station to clock tower. It's not going to be that sort of hub jump. It'll be that you have to get your way through the streets to the station, and then from the station you can jump to another station, and then from there you have to make your way across another bit to get to another area. I think that's probably what it's going to end up being.
It's more like an elongated loading screen or something.
Yeah. And rather than being just one large Raccoon City map, there's bits that are blocked off so you can't get through, so you have to use the subway in order to bypass the section to get to another part of the city. I kind of know where Paul's going with this in regards to like games in general are quite more handholdy and linear, so I can kind of understand it, but I feel like when I think about the gameplay of the original Resident Evil 3, that realistically the game, while it doesn't have someone in your ear constantly telling you where to go, the game already was quite a linear experience. The difference that made it not linear was the stuff they did to kind of pad it up to make it longer and replayable, which is something that we experienced. But realistically, the path works pretty linearly straight the way through. There's a few bits where you have to backtrack.
I agree.
And that clearly still looks like it's possible even in this version. So I don't think the 3 remake looking the same as that is perhaps an issue, but I do understand the idea that there is definitely a focus out there on hand-holding, and even the remake for 2 had this, it told you what your current goal was, you knew what you were looking for, even in areas that were slightly more open like the RPD. But the whole games are built around that concept anyway, that there's this false sense of exploration when realistically you've got locked doors and so forth, and the games ever since the original Resident Evil 2 have become ever so slightly more linear, if I want to be accurate. So
I do agree with you, Romby. I think it's my fault. I didn't kind of make the point that, once further playthroughs of the originals, you do become a lot more aware of them being slightly more linear. You're correct. But I think it's more the earlier playthroughs when the extra addition of the puzzles that just are completely devoid of, of any game since Resident Evil 4. It was the puzzles that kind of, gave you that opportunity to explore. And, my thing was that you'd find a particular item on one side of the RPD that actually wasn't necessarily of use until much later on in the game and in a completely different area. And, take that away. And that, I think that's the point that I mean, that it's your first earlier playthroughs when you can get really, like John says, you're quite lost, you're not sure where to go. Whereas now it just seems that they feel that this generation of gamers, don't have the patience to kind of start off that way. I think they just want to throw us into an easy game.
I think the problem also that's systemic is not just people streaming, but the number of games and people that are completionists and not completionists. Like if you look at like Xbox achievement stats and PlayStation trophy stats and so forth, you can see how far, because obviously most games have story-based trophies, ones that you get automatically from reaching certain points, and you can see the percentage drop-offs where how far people get. Most people don't finish games. That's the honest truth. So gameplays become easier to pick up and play with the idea that it's supposed to incentivize you to keep playing forwards and people to stop playing. And I think it's part and parcel. I can't just blame one part of the audience for it. I think it's just the way that gaming has gone. Much more casual, much more approachable. But I still think at the end of the day, Resident Evil 3, even taking what you were talking about with the RPD and stuff, and I totally agree with that for the first couple of games, I still think Resident Evil 3 is much more linear than any of the games that came before it. It was a case of like, you've got the first area, and while there are bits that loop around, you're looking for particular items in order to get further along. You're looking for a lighter to get through a gate that's got an oil-soaked rope around it. You then get to the RPD and you're looking for an access way to get to the next gate area, so you're looking for a lockpick. they are just like mini hubs in a constant linear fashion, and I feel like if that continues in the remake, I wouldn't be surprised, because that to me makes sense. That's what the original game was like too. So yeah.
But Capcom have tried to create the illusion by saying there is lots of optional buildings and things we can go in that you don't need to go in. It's going to be nice to have the option of going in these like abandoned shops and ransacked restaurants and looking for things. And
I like the idea. I was going to say, in Cat's Stream, you could clearly see you can take multiple paths that lead to the same area, and you can go up through another building, and it comes back. Like, those are all really cool things that they're all in one area.
That sounds a lot more
give the idea of
promising.
exploration.
Yeah. Sorry, I mean, I didn't see Cat's Stream, so...
Yeah, that was my point, because I would agree with you, George, about Carlos saying go left, do this. That's not great in that sense, but watching Kat stream, I mean, let's, for argument's sake, just call it downtown, wherever she was exploring, it felt like one giant hub area. She was able to go into the donut shop, and she was able to come out there, come back out, go explore this way, and then go up into a building, and then knock down like a ladder, and then suddenly she had access back to that, which I would imagine would be quite useful if you're escaping from the Nemesis. And it all kind of felt like a nice hubby area, which felt quite, as Rob said, quite similar to Resident Evil 3, because I think one of the best things Resident Evil 3 did was that you're in an open area, you're in the streets, and the developers were going, well, how can we make this feel claustrophobic? Well, they did it in a number of ways. They made barricades, they made it quite narrow with cars and God knows what coming, and so forth. So at times, it felt like you weren't really outside because of all the environments going on. And I think they've done a really good job from what I've seen. In replicating that, it felt like the barricades were natural. It wasn't like I remember playing when we did our Survivor playthrough. There's just a random barricade. So no, can't go that way. No reason, it's just a fence, because that was horribly linear. Whereas this had all sorts going on, and I was pleasantly surprised, because I had the same feeling as George going, well, this looks horribly linear, and I don't like going through back alley corridors all the time, especially in a big city one. I want to be going down the main street like an Outbreak. I want to be seeing the devastation. And I was getting a bit, oh dear, are we taking these back route? But it did open up, and I'm quietly excited about this one.
As long as they keep all the hub areas open, you don't want to complete one hub area and Jill runs around an alleyway and some fire then magically consumes the area, so you can't go back to the old one.
No, the worst part of Revelations that was, absolutely hated Revelations for that, for all these stupid fire shutters that came down every time.
In the 10 minutes Cat stream the other day, there's more Easter eggs in that than the entirety of Remake 2. So I think Capcom are encouraging exploration, and they don't have to do a lot. I mean, just let's say hypothetically Jill doesn't go to the RPD in this version. I'm sure she will, but let's just say she doesn't. We know Carlos and Tyrell go there for story reasons. It would be nice if there's a couple of doors in there, say, that they can't get into for whatever reason, so you would then have the option of Jill later in the game to go back and unlock those doors. Not to progress the story or for anything important, but just have the option to do that, to give you some incentive to go back and explore these places. Little things like that I think could really help make it a lot less linear.
I didn't realise that point about it. As you said, that's interesting that there are more Easter eggs to Outbreak, in that short period than there is in the entirety of RE2 Remake. Do you think that may even be sort of a slight kind of subconsciously educating us and fans that haven't played Outbreak for maybe a possible Outbreak release at some point in the future? That would be good.
I don't know if they'll go that far, but I think Capcom are definitely trying to say, look, we haven't forgotten about Resident Evil Outbreak, because I think these remakes have made Capcom aware that people still like Outbreak. We only really had Rita Phillips in Remake 2, whereas we've had posters for all sorts. We've had the Kite Brothers building, we've had Umbrella Noodles, we've had Zapata Beer, we've had loads of things from the Outbreak games, and this is just in like the couple of trailers and the 10-minute videos we've got of the same area, so I'm expecting there to be a hell of a lot more throughout the game, and that's why I said earlier, I'm interested to know if they're going to honour the events of Outbreak, or whether they're just sort of paying homage by throwing in all these references but then ignoring the events that happened and changing them completely. So time will tell.
Well, John, I'll save some of this Valium for you for when we do our podcast on the Code Veronica remake.
Yeah, thank you. I'm all for a Code Veronica remake, but that's another discussion.
So looking at the kind of new Raccoon City, it's always been a bit contentious. Even when Remake 2 came out, all these high-rise skyscrapers and things, which seemed a bit over the top for a city that's allegedly only 100,000 people going on. Do we think we're going to be going anywhere near them in Remake 3? They're in the background still, but I think they might just keep to what basically the same aesthetic that we've seen so far.
There's just a cosmetic thing that we just don't need, because if you look at the new Raccoon City map, you know, Jill's going to explore a significant portion of that map, like obviously not the outskirts, but the central part of it. And, you know, when you really think about it in the context of that map, those skyscrapers should not be there. They don't need to be there. You know, it might as well just be darkened sky. It's just one of the
occasional semi-tall building. Like if you had a town of 100,000 or so people, you'd have a few high-rise buildings.
Yeah.
But then I guess the idea that they're trying to put across is if this is... I mean, let's rewind on this. Like, Raccoon is supposed to be, like, what, the headquarters of Umbrella, right? Like, the American base of operations. This is the plan, right? I'm not wrong. There's no other planned base head of operations in America, right?
And there's other
facilities.
There's other facilities,
but Chicago branch, and
this is where the G-Virus project was run from, obviously.
But obviously, there's a huge impact. It's like one of their biggest sites. It's like, obviously, I'm trying to equate it to something like, I don't know, like DuPont or Monsanto will have a headquarters in a particular city like New York or Chicago or something, but they have like a big manufacturing town that'll be in the middle of nowhere, and I assume that's what Raccoons. So I think maybe it was misguided to say the town was over 100,000 people, because I think that's far too small anyway. But it's probably not also, you know, the scope that they put on the city now is way too big for even what you would probably have for a city that was manufacturing products, you know.
And considering the city is effectively owned by Umbrella, you would have thought that the skyscrapers were Umbrella skyscrapers. So
yeah.
It seems odd that you're not going to be able to explore any of these, and it's just like they thought, we'll put some skyscrapers in the background.
I mean, the boss fight that we've seen a little bit of was on the construction yard, and it looks like it's a number of stories up, but we can't tell how many. But there isn't so much shown at the same height in the background, so it's obviously a certain number of floors up in the air. It's yeah, I'm with all of you. I still have issues with the scope of the city. It's far too big.
So before we talk about then some of the BOWs, we'll have a quick talk about some of the areas that we've seen. The sewers seems to be getting a bit more of a love-in with this game. Very briefly touched in the original game. In fact, you're barely there, really, aren't you? It's just a fleeting visit. Whereas, because I suppose many people felt that Resident Evil 2 covered the sewers quite well, this game seems to have quite a more extended sequence.
Yeah.
Not happy, Sean? Not happy,
No,
Sean?
I mean, I didn't find the extended sewer section interesting in Resident Evil 2 all that much, the remake. So the fact that they're, adding an extended sewer section to Resident Evil 3 is... I just think there's so much more of the city we could see instead of just going underground again, to be honest.
I'd agree with that.
Unless it's an optional path, though. I mean, like, it goes back to this choosing your own route thing. You know, do you want to run around above ground where the Nemesis is on your ass all the time, or instead try and move through the sewers? So it'd be nice if you had that choice.
I'd agree with that too. Yeah, that would be a nice option, but I suspect the way the storytelling is, you're going to more likely have to go through both paths at some point. I think it's the way you would design these things, is that even if you've got a choice at first, the inevitability is that you have to eventually take both paths at various points.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they'll inevitably be the key item that you need to get to. For example, if it's to get the gems to get to the city hall, there's bound to be one overground, one underground type. So yeah, it's going to be.
That's
difficult.
Exactly what I'm meaning. Yeah.
Yeah, and I take the point. Yeah, if there is an underground section, which obviously equates to dark, brooding environment, it is relatively easy. And I'm a big fan of Resident Evil 5, but that they took a bold step in having it bright daylight. Can we make it scary in the bright daylight? Could do something similar in this and go, well, let's maybe test ourselves and go, let's see how scary we can make perhaps the most non-scary place going. Like zoo, for example. We know how scary that would be, and that wouldn't be great to have the zoo in this. There's a real nice callback to Outbreak. That could be quite a good test, I think, to try and make a non-scary place scary again, and you don't want to go there. Whereas a zoo is not very nice anyway. That could be, as you said, John, they could go mad with the reimagining. It wouldn't necessarily have a big impact on the canon, but
I would like to see. I mean, there's still probably plenty to show, but obviously, like, they've created a whole bunch of new buildings and stuff for us to go on, but I would like to see more of throwbacks to the areas in the original. We've seen a couple. There's obviously that little mini alleyway separated with a staircase and the chalk outline on the ground with the train on it.
Yes.
The alleyway that Jill goes through, that's both in the trailer with the grates on it down the walls with the brickwork, reminds me a lot of the alleyway that you have the rope around the gate that you have to catch on fire a little bit, the bars and stuff. But that's my biggest issue, is what I've seen so far. If we assume this is like a particular area, there's only been a few little invoking bits to remind me of that original. I just want to see a few more of those.
This is going to be a nice segue then, because one of the areas that we have seen a bit of exploration is what looks to be a power station that we obviously in Resident Evil 3. This looks to be a more major area, and that will tie in quite nicely to, we can then move on to discussion about the drained demos. This looks to be where they are now living and infecting, which is a nice callback to, again, Resident Evil 3, because that's where you first encounter them, just before you go in. But this is interesting. They're making a much more of a, looks like a bigger area in the power station. There's comments, you've got to do a relatively mundane task and switching on the switches and seeing how that plays out. But what did everyone think of the way the power station was looking?
It makes perfect sense, but I wasn't too keen on the drain demos that they showed. I don't like the fact that they've made it more spider-like. I'd like to see it more bipedal. I think they're much more interesting when they're sort of more, adult size. But as I said a couple of days ago, we may well see that in some sort of boss fight. There may be like a fully grown one. In terms of the environment, I don't think that it's going to be as greatly expanded as it maybe shows, but again, props for Capcom for keeping this all so under wraps, really.
So much has been leaked and rumoured. I don't know how well they have done.
My issue with that, and I was going to mention this later, but might as well since you brought it up, is that they've obviously had planned reveals and then someone broke embargo. My issue was that, all over the internet, is I wasn't shy on saying, is that had the video just come out without being leaked, people would have talked about it, and there would have been some spoilers, but for the most part, people would have been like, hey, new footage, and you would just watch the footage, right, or not. But the problem is when people release kind of stills and information about a trailer not released, then those bits of information get spread differently, and they get shown everywhere, and they become more spoilers. So it wasn't entirely Capcom, but then they didn't really giving this stuff to the various press people early was probably the problem. If they just released it to them on the night before, it probably wouldn't have happened. So yeah.
I like the idea of what they've done with the power station and making it more like a nest area. I think that's logical. And the drain demons, of course, are parasitic fleas, so they're obviously going to have some bug tendencies. My prediction, and you can put this in the Neptune prediction box, is that, like Sean says, there will be a boss fight, and it won't just be a big one, it will be the brain sucker. So I think the drain demos are going to be the smaller version, a bit like the Megabyte and the Gigabyte from Outbreak. You're going to have the drain demos, the small ones, and the brain sucker will be the big one. I don't think you're going to get regular brain suckers in the game.
I like the callback to the original Resident Evil 1 too, with the hanging swipe thing that they do, like the Chimera.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Not quite as deadly. Not quite as deadly.
No,
it looks like, but
it'd be interesting if they can pick Jill up as well off the ground at all. But that's quite a little nice touch, I thought.
John, did you catch the Drain Demos parts? What were your feelings there?
Yeah, pretty similar to Sean's, really. And yourself. I mean, I like the way it's been turned into some sort of nest, and as you said, the environment's set up for a boss battle there, really. So. Yeah, we'll see. I think you're right about the Brain Sucker as well. I don't think they'll appear, or if they do, it'll be as some sort of boss enemy. But yeah, the Brain Suckers don't bother me as much as the Hunter Gammas, put it that way.
George, any comments on the Drain Demos before we move on to the Hunters?
I particularly was interested in what Batman said about the design, the aesthetic for the Hunters, because I thought they did look very terrifying, but canonically, didn't seem to fit with the Hunter program. But in terms of the Drain Demos, I certainly like the design. I thought they looked very good, yes.
Even though you like the smallness of them, obviously they've halved in size.
Yeah, no, I just, again, more, I think with these games, again, with the Hunters, they're not necessarily going to canonically fit with, the program of, the development. But yeah, no, I didn't have a problem with them at all. I think it was more, for me, rather than the size, it was more how they fit into the game in terms of the game mechanic, sort of coming out from nowhere or coming out, from above you. And no, I thought they looked quite sort of nicely revolting. They looked good.
Yes. They reminded me of the, and John, you can probably tell me what they are, the Plagas that come up from the ground in the mining areas in 5.
The Buai Keachers, or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And the Plaga Type 2 that comes out of the mouths as well on the Ganado.
Moving on to the hunters, and John, you've already touched upon it. We haven't seen much of the hunter beaters yet. They're keeping that a bit under wraps. They were in the trailer, and we've got a kind of front-on view. They look a bit, I want to say beakier. I'm not sure if that's not a word, but I'm making it a word. They seem more poignant, I think, with their pronounce. But there's no need to dwell on them. Yeah, I don't think we don't want to dwell on them because we can certainly save that for the actual main discussion when we have a bit more information. But the gammas at the moment, now we do get a lot of information about the gammas. They almost look like a cross between the Ivy from Resident Evil 2. They've kind of got like quite a long, almost like a snout, haven't they? And then they kind of open themselves up in a kind of Gravedigger-esque, leading to lots of theories and talks about how they've combined the Gravedigger BOW with the Gamma, and they've dramatically increased in size. These things are huge, and they can one-hit kill / swallow, which of course is a bit of a throwback to the original. But John, do you want to expand a bit more about why you don't feel it fits the Hunter program?
It's just that it's such a radical redesign for me. I mean, yeah, it looks vaguely familiar, but it's just too different. I mean, the Gravedigger / Type 2 Plaga mouth, I don't think any kind of hunter would have that trait, just because it's been given amphibian DNA or whatever. I don't think it fits. I think it worked far better as a new creature and just have been some sort of irregular mutant. And it almost seems to be very similar to the G-monster from Remake 2 as well.
Yes, yeah.
That's
got a similar appendage, isn't it, with its
yeah,
as it opens its mouth, yeah.
So I mean, they might be different in game, but from what I've seen so far, I'm not really a fan. I wish they'd sort of stuck more to the original design, because again, it's one of those bugbears, because we know they appear in later titles, and obviously they're going to look different. So I don't like those kind of continuity changes, but we'll see. We'll wait for the final game before passing judgment.
They do look terrifying, though. Nightmare fuel, I think it's a term that's been used.
The gameplay of them looks very similar to the Geomargos in 2, in that they emerge out of sort of sewer vents and effectively block progress. So we'll see if they're incorporated differently in the gameplay. I also get the impression, and I'm probably reading it wrong, that there isn't many.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. I just got the impression that there might even just be like the odd couple of them, just to be like more of a set piece than an actual enemy that populates, toward the end game.
There's probably going to be a risk-reward system to attacking them, because obviously if you get too close, you can get instantly killed, but you also obviously want them to open their mouth because it causes more damage.
Yeah, because they talk, you can put the grenades in their mouths as well, but yeah, that kind of thing, isn't it?
Well, Resident Evil 5 throwback.
There we are.
To U8.
Thank you very much. Right, let's talk about the titular character then. The big N himself, the big cheese, Nemesis.
Can I bring this up? Because I mentioned this to you guys, gosh, I remember a month ago. The trailer that had the Nemesis being operated on.
Yes.
Which we've seen the lovely piece of artwork with his pair of socks on.
Yes.
I was going back and watching that original trailer, and I came to the realization that the rooftop that he's being deployed from is clearly not in Raccoon, and it's a big city, and there's traffic driving in the background. So going back to my original thing about the base of Umbrella, I'm starting to assume that this is being dispatched from, say, Chicago or somewhere.
Yeah, there's lots of rumours they've massively expanded on the backstory of Nemesis, and this, if this flashback is in a different city or a different location, then this could lend credence to the rumours that Spencer might have a small appearance, because, as he said, if he's got an appearance and a voice actor in Resident Evil Resistance, which is essentially part of this game, it would stand to reason that he would appear in RE3 in some capacity, and this will probably be it, because we've seen concept art of a Spencer-like character observing the Nemesis as he's being created, so, it wouldn't surprise me at all, and why not?
To tie into what we know already, in theory, do you think this should be Paris that he's shipped in from? Or do you think there's a bit of room for manoeuvre, i.e. they made the Parasite in Paris and then they shipped it off to Chicago to finish off or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, Nemesis, it's an Umbrella Europe creation, but it could easily have been shipped for deployment in America, because they know it's going to go to Raccoon City, so I don't think that'll be too much of an issue.
Shipped to Sheena Island.
Oh, wonderful. And then multiple. We know it's coming. Multiple Nemesis.
Well, they obviously had the batch number written on the thing, and we can see clearly the crashed unit in the background of one of the areas in some of the shots and video from the finished game as well. So
it's coming. It's coming.
I'm going to be curious to see how that information gets relayed in the game. I think that's going to be an interesting way. And how do we see all this? When does
It could be that
come?
art book. There's that Project N art book, isn't there?
Mm.
Part of the collector's edition. So it could be a lot of that in
There's a
in
collector's
the
edition for Resident Evil 3, is there? Oh, that's nice.
It's yours, Sean, if you are willing to pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds on eBay.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks very much. In terms of the gameplay for Nemesis, I'm so divided because in one sense, at its worst, in like the flamethrower battle they've showed at the top of the construction site, it looks like a lost, deleted fight from Orc, in that he just kind of walks around very stuntedly with a weapon, shooting at you in a not terribly interesting boss fight. But then there's other moments where he's actually running through the city, and his footsteps are loud, and he's quite sort of slow, and he gains momentum as he runs quicker. It was like a playable flashback to Damnation, and I'm certainly there for that. But I mean, you know, obviously he's been doing these massive leaps to block you off in areas, and I know a couple of write-ups from the press releases and whatnot that were from the press members that got to play it said he does overpower gameplay quite a lot. So it's going to be a real fine balance to get him right, I think.
I think this is something we've all been concerned about. I mean, arguably, as John said earlier, I mean, once you've triggered Mr. X in Resident Evil 2, you can't enjoy the RPD again because you just don't have time unless you're in the save room. So it's very difficult to imagine how more difficult Nemesis is going to be over Mr. X without it being too overpowered. What's his scope? Can he climb up the ladders like we see Mr. X do? You'd imagine he would, but would it be nice if he can only do that if he hasn't got his flamethrower or something like that? That would be quite an interesting touch. You know, are we safe at that point? How can we get away? Because I think they also said that you can't actually outrun him, which of course you can in Remake 2, just about. Providing, you know, you're on fine, you can outrun Mr. X relatively easily. Don't make a mistake.
I think the difference there is that you can lose Mr. X. He starts searching for you. But it doesn't sound like that capacity has been... Well, you might be able to lose Nemesis, but they haven't really talked, or no one's really talked about that fact. I think part of what we were saying before, Nick, with the, you know, kicking down that ladder and creating different pathways through the same areas is probably part of trying to hide / lose him, you know, in your trails. Because you can go, you know, through 2 different buildings or 3 different buildings, and we can go up over one or maybe under one, a sub basement or something. And these will be the ways you kind of try and lose them, but then you still have to backtrack because obviously you want to go back to what you were doing. You know, you're trying to find an item for a puzzle or solve a puzzle or whatever. So I think that's how the gameplay is going to work.
And I think they also said that if you take him on and actually incapacitate him, he won't appear again in that particular area.
I wonder if they'll introduce, to an extent, a semi-stealth element. So if you can hide from him, will he stop running around like a headless chicken? And can you, avoiding, I was thinking about Resident Evil 6 recently with the kind of Ushtanak part in the caves, which was a bit stealthy. I wonder if they could introduce that mechanic where, not necessarily the mechanic with the moths, but you know what I mean? You can kind of like, he'll stop running and he'll just explore. And if the area is as big as we think it could be for a hub area, because you can't really hide that well in the RPD because it's quite small and quite cramped, but can you hide behind a particular corner and then sneak past, and then you know you've got a good amount of time because he's not going to come back that way? I just wonder if that's one way of them being able to explore a whole new area without worrying that Nemesis is going to come up behind you. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's much like what Sean was saying before. There's bits of like this appearance that makes me wonder what it's going to be like, and not in a great way. Like, I do agree, like the fight on top of the construction thing with the flamethrower is very clunky. It gets better when the flamethrower explodes and he's actually like stomping around and leaping and using the remainder as a weapon, and it reminds me much more of the original in that sense with the rocket launcher. And yeah, I don't know. I'm indifferent. I need to see more, I think, and know a bit more about the gameplay. It seems like a perfect opportunity. You know, we're talking about not showing. The one thing that they probably should be showing right now is how Nemesis works in an actual gameplay environment. Like, actually release a video that shows that, because I think that will get people interested. Where you can show that you can fight him, or you can hide, or you can, you know, that's the bit that we've obviously got the biggest amount of questions about.
Yeah. It is also worth saying as well that any rumour you've read about Nemesis being able to enter save rooms has been completely debunked by Capcom now, and that is not the case.
Yeah. I think they just got mixed up with what constitutes a save room. But yeah, I'd like to see the return of dumper trucks and dumper bins be able to hide in, a bit like again in 6. That would be a really nice way, to be actually physically able to hide and not just in a save room. Because a lot of the time when you are being chased by Mr. X, you can lose him, but
Or it'll just become reliant on the dodge mechanic that Cat showed off.
Yes. So let's talk dodging, which is a nice return back from Resident Evil 3. Jill seems to enter into the Matrix, as she does.
Well, Cat has explained this, that it is essentially, for all intents and purposes, the Revelations 2 dodge, in that you have a dodge button, and if you press that button with a direction, Jill will do like a lunge into that direction, exactly the same way that it worked in Revelations 2. However, if you're getting attacked, at the moment you press the dodge button, you will go into like that slow-mo dodge thing, which gives you an attack opportunity if you press the aim button. It's in one of the trailers, yeah.
And then you can use that time to get a couple of shots on whoever you've dodged, if you choose to.
I can't see myself using that. I don't think I ever used the Rev 2 dodge, but that doesn't surprise you.
No, the person that had trouble with the chainsaw fight, not using the dodge.
The dodge in Revelations 2 is really good, Nick. It
is actually really good
and easy to use.
Oh,
Nick's got to go back and replay Rev 2 before this. Yeah.
Kat showed off very well. It's well worth checking out her stream. It's on the official Resident Evil Twitch channel as opposed to her channel, so worth going and have a look at that. And do you think that is the beginning of the game? Because it seems like that first zombie she encounters is the first zombie that you encounter in the game, because it gives that time. The zombie doesn't really come towards you anytime soon. It is made to look like you're testing out the dodge mechanic. But do we think that tied up with meeting Carlos first?
I got the Monica. She's already speaking to Carlos, isn't she, on the headset?
She is.
So I think that is after. If you were to think about it in the structure of the original Resident Evil 3, I think this is the moment of the game where you have to go around to various areas like the pharmacy and whatnot and collect the items to make the train car move.
Because you've got the throwback to the fire and the fire hydrant.
Yeah, and then there's the pharmacy that she didn't go into.
The other bit earlier on, when we got to see all the press gameplay bit, the first bit that played out it seemed like very close to when they'd first met. Carlos comes and picks her up from something that we didn't see, and then takes her into the subway thing, and they're having that conversation as they're making their back way through before you met Mikhail the first time. And I think all those must take place before this, because otherwise she wouldn't be talking to Carlos at all on the radio.
And in the very first trailer we saw glimpses of what must be Jill's apartment. So
there's also the scene with Nikolai being first met, and obviously he's already aware of Jill. My theory was maybe it has something to do with Brad, his comments, but someone also maybe mentioned it may have to do with Murphy.
Yeah, she didn't act when she had the chance or something. She's unreliable.
It could be one of those two people that she had a chance to kill them and didn't, and Nikolai ended up stepping in and doing it.
Yeah.
There's a really nice GIF that the official Resident Evil Twitter have just put out today, actually, which shows 2 shots. It shows the streets burning, but also Jill stood at like the window, and I'm pretty certain that's her apartment where the game will start.
And Nemesis turns up straight away, doesn't he, from the looks of the trailers?
Yeah. He'll literally, I imagine he'll literally knock the apartment door down.
I think you're going to see him a lot at the start of the game, because is it the second trailer where Jill drives the car and runs into him off the rooftop? That seems to take place at the top of a parking structure, and some of the screenshots have shown that parking structure is on the main street running up to the RPD. So we're going to have a lot of Nemesis at the start of the game.
From what I understand as well, you can see he's still got his mask on at that point.
Yeah.
And his head, wrappings.
And I think it's immediately after Jill drives off the roof in the car. That's when Carlos comes over and checks if she's all right. I think that's when they first meet.
Okay. Let's hope we don't have too many driving sections, please.
I imagine it'll be more akin to the Resident Evil 7 one. It'll just be for that set piece.
Yes. Let's hope so.
Someone who's not a fan of redesigns, I know, was very vocal about the redesigns of characters and whatnot in Resident Evil 2. I do have to say, I think Jill looks absolutely amazing in this. She looks incredible.
Yeah, I think they've hit her appearance and attitude. The voice actor seems to be very good. I think Kat mentioned it as well. She exudes the experience of the mansion incident while still being relatively young. I think she's only 21, is it? 22 at this time?
23, I think.
23, so still relatively young, but she's got a wealth of experience and confidence, and she's no civvy after all. So, you know, and I think they've hit the nail on the head for all the characters so far. In terms of,
I still think if you were to take Carlos and show him out of context with no caption or subtitle or whatever, you wouldn't know it's Carlos. That's my only issue with that redesign.
Which adds to what Paul said earlier about the voice acting as well, being his background.
Yeah, it seems odd, but I think it looks a bit better than what Leon and Claire look like.
One of the things that I don't like so far earlier about the game is there's the dialogue that's taken from the restaurant in Resident Evil 3 after they've blown the kitchen up, and Jill and Carlos are stood in the alleyway outside, and that's when Jill learns about the fact that they're umbrella deployed. That conversation's remade quite faithfully between Carlos and Jill running through what looks like a part of the subway. And really disappointingly for me, it's in like a walking section that's voiced as opposed to a dedicated cutscene. And I really, really hope all the character interactions aren't like that through the game. I hope, so much of it's lost. Like, Jill's revelation that they are umbrella deployed mercs. Her reaction's lost if all you can see is the back of her head. So I hope they don't rely on that mechanic a lot through the game. As you walk through city streets with Carlos, they actually have these, conversations full of revelation and whatnot.
I'd agree. And equally, I'll be worried about, I want to explore that area as well. Around, there's lots of posters to have a look around that they just casually walk past. Will these areas become almost like locks? Because you're going to go, that kind of thing. So there could be two reasons why. And I agree with you about that, missing out on, big scenes facially with a reaction out on top of potentially areas being locked off because that's a dialogue scene or something like that.
It's clearly masking loading or something, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I think we've kind of covered quite a lot of the what we've seen so far. We talked about dodge and the enemies and the characters. What's everyone's major hope for this? What do they, this time next month we would have completed it and we'll be looking forward to replays, streams, resistance, whatnot. But what do you want to be sitting here thinking? Yes, that got that right. What's your big hope? George, start with you.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised when you mentioned the hub areas. So, and John as well, talking about being able to go into other buildings. It's a point I've laboured before, but whilst I'm happy, like John, that the extra buildings you can go into don't necessarily have to be particularly plot driven, in order to follow the main plot. But if we can just get little environmental descriptions, I'm never going to let that go, because I mentioned before in another podcast, these generate discussions through us. A quick example that, in the Spencer Mansion, the footprints through the bed. That just little description provokes all these forum threads about, were they Weskers, leading into his room? Was it George Trevor? That was the room where he was incarcerated. So I just, and that helps us just to engage more with the game. So just consider that, yes, that, there are the fans out there, the large channels and streamers that are going to get great fun, and the audiences are going to get great fun from all the Nemesis battles and the Nemesis pursuits. But could we please just have that, just maybe move away from the one-dimensional and just have a little more deeper feeling to this game? Because for me, it's nice to have the odd Easter egg back to Outbreak, but I'd just like to see something a little bit deeper than an Easter egg, perhaps an Easter egg that you can actually engage with and read and
Kevin turning up, for example.
Yeah, wow. Well, even Marvin, that was mentioned. Yeah, so let's just see. And again, Resident Evil 3 was more kind of combat orientated than RE2, with the use of the ammo and the Nemesis pursuit. So I have no aversion for that, but I just think I would feel the game was more fully rounded if we had included in that, the survival horror and a deeper exploration to it. And puzzles, please. Sorry, can we please have some bloody puzzles? Just provoke. Like John said, shit. Where do I go? I'm in this save room, and you want to plan your route ahead. And whilst you're planning your route ahead, you're feeling really tense about if you make the wrong decision.
Batman, what's your hope for this game?
Difficult to say, really. I mean, I just want it to be consistent throughout. I mean, looking back on Remake 2 a year down the line, my general opinion of it is I think the first half is really good, but once you leave the sewers and go into Nest, it sort of loses its way a little bit, and I hope the second half of this game, you know, the clock tower and the hospital and the dead factory, which we already know has been changed to a nuclear power plant, is going to be recognisable to the old game. I don't want them to change it completely like they did with the underground lab. And I also hope that they really make an effort to tie it in with Resident Evil 2. I mean, I know they didn't know originally that Resident Evil 3 was going to be set before and after, but they know that with these remakes. So why not crossover events with Resident Evil 2 more? We've seen that screenshot of Jill with Robert Kendo, so that's an impressive sign. And people have speculated about Nemesis potentially knocking down the walls in the RPD. So let's hope that's the case. It would be nice if once this game's out, we can sort of go back and treat Resident Evil 2 and 3 as one big game that really does connect, rather than just two separate games that take place in the same city. Because I am still tempted for a first run through to play the first half of Resident Evil 3, then play Remake 2, then go back to Resident Evil 3 just to see what that experience is like. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, yeah, I'm probably not as excited as I would be for Resident Evil 8, because I just want the story to progress. We're on retreading old ground here, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be better than Remake 2.
Okay, Rob?
Yeah, pretty similar. This is no slight against any of you, but I think I've been pretty reasonable about the previous game and this game. I think I'm just looking forward to surprises and changes and something that feels familiar but has, all these new little things. I'm much like the same way as John's just said, but like having a little bit more direct connection with the original, just so that we have those reference points rather than being almost all new, as far as, like not just Easter eggs, but just feeling like it actually has some connection is definitely something I'm looking forward to. But I'm sure there's going to be plenty of surprises, and I'm hoping that before the game comes out in a few weeks that they don't get ruined. That's literally my main hope right now, is that people don't go out there spoiling stuff for people just because they can. So yeah, I look forward to the demo as well, coming in the next week or two, I'm guessing. And
Yeah, I've won.
And hopefully it doesn't get data mined, as Sean alluded to.
My overall concern remains that I think Resident Evil 2 is going to feel really disjointed. I know they've got an opportunity to, as John just said, to put the Nemesis did break the wall in the RPD, but there's not a lot else that they could do. There's no random Brad zombie. There's no mention of in any of the files of seeing a man, a big tyrant with a black trench coat wandering around or anything like it. They could. I mean, it could have been a lot better.
I just started to say the one thing. What about an Ada appearance? Not directly talking, but off in the distance somewhere in a trench coat.
Yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing they should be doing. Yeah,
I don't think they will. I think, John, if you do the Resident Evil 3 half, then 2, I think Remake 2 is going to stick out like a sore thumb. That's my fear.
They did the little thing with adding Jill's letter in, didn't they? Which I still haven't got yet, actually. But, they can sort of do it backwards, can't they? They can reference Remake 2's events in this game.
Yes.
So that's what I'm hoping for anyway. I really do hope they make an extra effort to connect it all.
Sean?
You know what? I'm sort of resigned to the fact that there'll be so much changed and everything like that. And I'm going to, already have adopted this sort of non-canon stance on it. So I just actually like to see them just from a purely storytelling point of view to actually, and this goes back to a little bit of what GT just said, actually getting something deeper and a little bit more meaningful. Like, actually like brilliant emotive drama and character beats. I wax lyrical about how like it was Resident Evil 2 that really pulled me, and I loved the first game, but it was Resident Evil 2 that made me appreciate how storytelling can be done in the video games industry. And I will say, like, as much as I've loved 7 and things like that, I think part of that has been lost in these more modern games. I don't think there's a great wealth of emotion you can extract from Resident Evil 7, bar that little moment we did on stream the other night, Nick, with Jack talking to Ethan in that dream scene.
Oh, yes.
That's a good one. But Resident Evil 2, for a game that triggers my emotion so much in the original 98 version, the remake leaves me empty and hollow. I just don't think there's anything in there that invokes any kind of real emotion in me. And I'd just like to actually see them really embrace just like good storytelling and character beats, which I just don't think the series has had for years now. And, the example I've been using is the mystery of the Samurai Edge, which I think is fascinating. And obviously we've got this sort of image of Jill meeting Kendo. And I think they're going to I think by the fact that they didn't show Kendo's death in Resident Evil 2, I think they've left it open for him to return in the second half of Resident Evil 3. And I think if you look at Jill's gear in that picture, and it might well be just a promotional image that they've used of Jill, but she's got like a shoulder strap and a backpack, and she's got a bandage on her arm, which implies that it's potentially after her Nemesis infection. I just would really love it if they could embrace that moment where Kendo is going to give her her new samurai edge for the end game, and it's just a really nice moment, for example. And this is just all fan fiction, but I just find it absolutely incredible if like he hands her the samurai edge. She looks down, sees the Stars logo, and they just do something really awesome. Like she has like a flashback of the Spencer Mansion and all her comrades who've all been gone, and that kind of strengthens her resolve to carry the fight on. And then if they do recreate that "I'll give you stars" moment, she actually uses the samurai edge instead of a generic magnum. Just some like big fucking hero moment that I don't feel like the series has had for quite some time now. I think Jill's the perfect character to do this with.
And we know they're not adverse to having funny flashes, because in the trailer we get her being flashed as a zombie as well. So if she is having PTSD or minor issues like that, in minor cause of concern, then they could easily put that in, like a proper "you want stars, I'm going to give you stars," that kind of thing.
And she sees the face of her deceased comrades, and we see them all recreated in the new RE engine as she fires her custom samurai edge. I just think it'd just be something like that would be so awesome. And the thing is, the earlier games had moments like that, and I just don't feel we've had a really good one now for ages. I think that sort of heroic storytelling has been lost in favour of boring realism a little bit.
Yes. I just agree so much with exactly what you just said. That boring realism.
These characters are supposed to be larger than life, and I just, every now and then, I just kind of love them when they are a little bit like that. I just think back to all those great moments in the earlier games. As much maligned as Code Veronica X is, who doesn't just get a slight grin when Chris is like, as a surviving member of Stars, I have to finish this. It's just, no, give me those moments again.
It's so ridiculous. It is ridiculous, isn't it, if you stop and think about it? But it's B-movie. It's Resident Evil. It's what it's based on.
But they've got good opportunity with this game. I mean, you could have a really powerful scene with Brad and Jill, where he has a breakdown and apologises for leaving her at the mansion.
Oh yeah, imagine it.
Stuff that could quite easily do all this, and the files as well. Put some bloody bite back into the files. The files in Remake 2 were so hollow, abridged Cliff Notes versions of what we had originally. Put some bloody decent files in there, please.
Imagine a really amazing sequence between like Marvin and Jill where he heartfelt apologises for like the fact that no one believed them.
Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of opportunity here, and they've obviously got good voice actors from what we've seen so far, so yeah, here's hoping.
So that's my main wish, Nick, in answer to your question. I sort of went off a bit there, but
no,
just the reintroduction of just like genuine emotion in this series and strong characters.
I think that all sounds wonderful, and let's hope it continues. But we will inevitably look back on this, and with our coverage of Resident Evil 3 Remake, we'll be doing our in-depth podcasts as well, and obviously I'm sure myself and Sean will be doing our streams, and anyone else as well. So that does finish off our final preview of Resident Evil 3 Remake. We hope you've enjoyed it, and just before we leave, we have time for this podcast edition of Neptune's Biohazard Quiz.
For the past 8 years and 5 seasons, we have brought you groundbreaking lore, in-depth analysis, game reviews, and high-quality content. We've also brought you untold controversies, countless tales of underhand tactics, all in aid of the quiz.
I'd just like to announce, everybody, that this is 0 points for me this week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So my nomination person said 7, but I didn't agree with 7. I said it was 17, and then you said it was 17.
I didn't want people to think I'm cheating by just saying the same number that someone else has said, so I just the next number that sounds similar to 17. I swear I did not cheat, yo!
Jesus Christ. That's not a fucking question, is it?
Quite frankly, if we only got 1 point and that's the winning score, then we're not doing our jobs right, and we're all going to have to hand in our biohazard cards.
Welcome to Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Batman. Star Tyrants. George Trevor. Robbie McGregor. Mr. Spencer. Neptune's Biohazard Quiz.
So welcome one and all. Welcome. Here we go. A relatively straightforward quiz this week, just the standard 5 questions. We've got an eclectic mix of questions. So, clear your desktops. Here we go with question number 1. What is the name of the toy shop we see in Remake 3? Bang up to date, folks. Bang up to date.
Creepy bloody toy shop.
Very creepy. It reminds me of the Donut Man. Is it Donut Man from Simpsons?
Lard Lad.
Lard, that's it. There we go. Question number 2. In Resident Evil 7, you need 3 dog head models. What colours are they? Question number 3. What is the name of the head teacher of the Mahara school? First and second name.
Oh, yes. Finally, I'm going to get one right.
Question number 4. It's a welcome return of the Odd One Out round. Regular players of the Odd One Out round will know we play the Biohazard Starters rules here, so there are inevitably a number of options and answers that are potentially available. I'm looking for a specific one. So, which is the odd one out of these 3 BOWs? Number 1, Ndesu. Number 2, Anubis. Number 3, the Hunter 2. Or number 4, the Liquor Beater. So I'll just say them again. The Ndesu, Anubis, Hunter 2, or the Liquor Beater. And I'm going to give you all a bit of a clue. It's not the obvious answer. There's an
I don't even know the obvious answer.
Okay, so have a think about that. And finally, question number 5 comes in from Vito. What is the birthday of the plant manager whose file you find in Resident Evil 3?
I'll run that one again by me, Nick, please.
What's the birthday of the plant manager that you find in Resident Evil 3? Dead factory manager, I think.
So presumably his birthday. I mean, I don't know the answer, but his birthday's going to be in the file, I imagine.
Yes, I think so. Yes. So they are our 5 questions. Join us after this when we'll run through those answers.
Stars. 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 Stars.
Stars. Welcome back to Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Let's see how everyone has done. So, we start off with question number 1. What is the name of the toy shop we see in Remake 3? Rob, you seem quite confident this time. What was your answer to this one?
I honestly can't remember the name. I just remember the creepy bloody face. It's something weird. Toy Uncle or something like that, I think, is what I was just popped into my head just as I was saying creepy face. I could be wrong. I think there was Uncle in there.
Okay, Batman?
Yeah, it's Toy Uncle, and I only know that because I've been watching the videos as we've been recording this podcast, so that worked.
GT?
No, I've got no idea. I was trying to think of some kind of pun on Toys R Us, which I couldn't. Toy Uncle sounds a bit creepy, doesn't it?
Stars?
Smiths.
That's one for the teenagers.
It is Toy Uncle, and I would entirely agree with you, George. It is ridiculously creepy for a toy shop.
Yeah.
You add that face, and it's just. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bit like a really odd version of Owl's Barn toy shop from Toy Story. Very odd, but there we go. So yes, points there to Batman and Romby. Good guess, well done, Rob. That came to the last one.
It just literally, I'm not exaggerating there. I was just thinking about the face, and I was like, I know it's got a weird name. Oh, Uncle, Toy Uncle.
So question number 2 was our Resident Evil 7 question. So you need the 3 dogs' heads in order to get the back door. What colours are they? I'll start with Batman this time.
Oh, Christ. Bronze, silver, and, oh, God, I don't know, black.
Okay. Star's turn.
I know one of them is red, red, green, and blue.
Romby?
Red, white, and blue.
Okay. George Trevor?
I must be wrong because I think you've all got it wrong. I know one's is like a bronze goldy colour. That's because I was repeatedly picking it up every time Jack Baker killed me. So I'm pretty sure the one with Jack Baker is like a bronzy gold colour. And I'm sure there's one that's like a green. I haven't seen any blue or white or red ones. So I'm pretty sure there's a greenish one, a bronze one, and then the third one, I didn't think it is red. I mean, I was going to guess and say silver, but definitely green and bronzy.
Okay. Well, George, your assumption that everyone is wrong is wrong. The point goes to Rob, who is spot on. It is red, blue, and white. Very good.
Wait, the dog heads that you put on the door to go outside?
They are specifically labelled. Yes,
they're labelled red, white, and blue.
I must have my colour up on a weird... I'm going to have to go back and play this game. I don't know if the Valium's kicking in. This is weird. Seriously, okay.
So a point there to Rob, half a point to Stars, who got 2 out of 3. Well done. Question number 3. So what's the name of the head teacher of Mahara School? George, you were confident. You said yes. Come on.
Well, I'm now ashamed the only point I'm going to get is from that stupid manga. It's and I know this because I was doing the translations. It's Doug Wright with a W, W-R-I-G-H-T, Doug Wright.
Okay, Batman.
Gracia Delincas.
Wait, you. As I said that, you went like, yo, wait, you said the head of... Oh, no, you're talking about the nuns, aren't you? Shit. Fuck. So 0 out of... Oh, bollocks.
Controversy continues on the quiz.
And I knew it was Mother Gracia. I knew it was Mother Gracia as well. I just stormed in there.
GT on the Resident Evil podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, fuck.
He'll still manage to get half a point for it, though.
No, because as soon as Nick kind of paused...
I knew exactly what you actually...
Oh, as soon as you paused, Nick, I thought, fuck, what have I done?
Well, I paused because you're so confident, and it makes me go, oh, crumbs. I always question my research. Oh, Jesus.
How did you phrase the question? What you said, who is the head of the school?
The Mahara School.
Yeah, it's Gracia, but no, I got 0. Shit.
Stars Tyrant, what did you have?
I had no idea.
Rob?
No clue.
No clue. It is, yeah. Points to Batman. It's Gracia Delincas. So very good, very good. Not Doug Wright, no. And
I didn't know that was her surname. I just had it as Mother Gracia.
I probably would have given you that one.
I tell you what, though, there's nothing worse than being so confident about an answer. Look it all up completely.
But then giving an answer to a different question.
Yeah.
Question number 4 was our odd one out round. So which is the odd one out of these BOWs? We've got Ndesu, Anubis, Hunter 2, and the Liquor Beta. So I say it's not the obvious one. We'll start with Stars. What I'll do, half a point if you get it right. So you got 1 in 4 chance, and you get half a point if you tell me why.
So, to not repeat the shenanigans of episode 34, we have to try and get into your brain, Nick. We know where that led us last time.
This is a good one.
I don't think any of these are car manufacturers, so we're good.
Yes.
So, I have gone for a completely outlandish theory, and I'm probably going to be completely wrong with this because John will tell me there isn't such a thing in place. Is that I think, and I've been sat thinking about this so hard, 3 of them are controlled through like a control device, if you like. So Nadeso would be controlled through a dominant plaga. Lickers can be controlled through sound waves emitted by the dominant plaga. And Hunter 2s are controlled by, or at least led by the little like HCF little robot monitor things. The Anubis, to my mind, doesn't have any kind of control device or dominant device like that. So I think it's the Anubis.
Interesting. Okay. Rumby?
I have no idea. I could pick one at random. I'm just going to pick Liquor Beta because I have no idea.
Okay. George?
I've got no idea. I thought Sean's answer was great. I like that. I'm just going to say, and Desso's that big ogre creature from 4, isn't he? 5. That will be my guess. And
Desu, okay.
I'm just guessing. I've got no idea.
Any reason why?
No, I was going to say no, because he's not controlled by anything. But no, I've got no idea.
Okay. Batman, what's your answer?
Well, I'm assuming it's probably going to have something to do with Pokemon or Doctor Who rather than Resident Evil. I don't know. I mean, to be honest, the only thing I can think of is the Nindesu, the Licker Beater, and Hunter 2 are all improved versions of a previous creature, whereas the Anubis is an original creature. So I'm going to say Anubis.
Batman is spot on. That
well
is the exact answer. The Ndesu and Hunter 2 and Licker Beater are all improvements of original BOWs, where the Anubis is a replacement for the Hunter program.
Marvellous.
Very good. Very good. Yes. So well done. So definite point to Batman. I'm going to be really pernickety. Sean, you get half a point for Anubis is the correct answer. Your answer was very good as well, but
It's probably wrong though. I can't remember much about the Anubis.
No, you are right. I suppose the Indesu is controlled by a Plaga. Hunter 2 can be controlled to an extent through the drones. The Licker Beaters weren't controlled though, John?
Well, no, but it's the sound waves, isn't it, that control them?
I thought that was just the damnation ones.
Well, yeah, but I would imagine it would still work with them because they're still controlled through sound waves, aren't they? They're blind still.
Well, I don't know. I'm toying with the idea.
No, just Joker's the half, man.
Question number 5 was Vito's question. What is the birthday of the plant manager whose file you find in Resident Evil 3? Oh, this is tricky. Stars?
I have no idea.
I'm not going to hazard a guess.
August the 8th.
August the 8th, okay. Robbie?
There you go.
I think it's April, but I have no idea which day it is. I just remember April in one of the manager's files.
You have a guess at the date? 1 in 31 chance.
Oh. April 21st.
21st, okay. George?
I've got no idea, but I used to think that the notice board in RE3, which had 3rd of the 10th, was actually the 10th of March, which is my birthday, and got overexcited until I found out the Americans do it the wrong way round. So I'm just going to say the 10th of March, my birthday.
Okay, Batman, this is your speciality, a timeline question.
It's his 30th birthday, I remember that, and I think it is around April. I'm going to say April 25th, something like that.
He's right, isn't he?
Is it really?
Because he dreams this stuff.
Marvellous.
It's April the 25th. So
Wow.
points to Batman. How?
Can you imagine if I guessed that? There would be screams of cheat in the Discord.
I know, but look what I've just written. What have I wasted my life on?
Unbelievable.
I feel happy that I got within 4 days.
You did very well. In
I'm
fact,
very
you
happy
get
with that.
half a point. So let's have a look at the final scores then. So this week's winner, back on form, back on top with 4 out of 5. It's Batman. Well done. Congratulations. In second place, Romby with 2.5.
Yay.
Very good. In third place, it's Stars Tyrant with 1.5. Back to normality after Code Veronica victory there. But not too bad. Better than the 0 you predicted.
Well, yeah.
Sadly, though, the nil point does come out into play. George, not getting off the mark for this podcast.
And I even had my NASA book open for any astronaut questions as well. That was a waste of time.
You mean Google?
Oh, man.
So thank you, everyone, for playing. That does conclude Neptune's Biohazard Quiz for this podcast. Join us next time and we'll have some more questions. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That wraps up pretty much our podcast, our final preview before Resident Evil 3 drops. By the time this comes out, we shouldn't be too far away at all. So get your pre-orders in now if you want to play as soon as possible. I recommend Shop 2 if you live in England. They're pretty good. They're getting it in very early. And only 40 quid, I think, for pre-order, which is not too shabby either. Obviously, the next podcast will be our review of Resident Evil 3 Remake, so looking forward to that. I know with our Remake 2, we spread that over 3 podcasts, quite incredibly. I don't think we'll have a canon podcast specifically about Resident Evil 3 because I suspect a lot of the issues and points that we discussed for Resident Evil 2, I think will probably equate nicely over to Resident Evil 3. So just going to be focusing on our reviews. But if anyone has any comments, call-ins, feel free to do it. We've got an email address now, so you can ping us an email, team@residentevilpodcast.com. If you send that from your normal email provider, attach an MP3, we'll be able to pick that up, and you'll be on the podcast, subject to us not rambling on for 4 hours. But we'll see how we get on.
Which is possible.
It's just distinctly possible. So we could end up having another Community 0.5 podcast, which we did last time, which is really good actually. I really enjoyed that. So lots to look forward to. But that does finish up our discussion for today. So on that note, again, I'd say thank you everyone for supporting us with our new website. I know we teased it a while ago, so thank you again for your patience. On that note, it is goodbye from me, Neptune.
Goodbye from me, Batman.
Goodbye from me, Stars Tyrant.
Goodbye from me, George Trevor.
And goodbye from me, Rumpy.